So I'm just going to say, may the divine presence bless our gathering this evening and open our hearts to Tukaram and to one another. That's my prayer. May the divine presence open our hearts to Tukaram and to one another. And so, Haima,
Yes, Brother Shukra.
please read for us, did God really say the word goofball?
Sure. I'll be honored to. It's page 338. The poem, Did God Really Say the Word Goofball? Did God really call that famous leader a goofball? If he did, no need to worry about God anymore. He is doing just fine. And we're all a lot better off than I earlier suspected. Did God really say the word goofball? Did God really call that famous leader a goofball? If he did, no need to worry about God anymore. He's doing just fine. And we're all a lot better off than I earlier suspected. Beautiful poem. So hilarious.
Well, yeah, that's it. Tukaram asserts to us that he has these conversations with God. And in one of those conversations, apparently God said, call that famous leader, whatever the famous leader was,
I wonder who he's talking
a
about.
goofball. And I certainly think we can all empathize with that. They often are and behave that way. Anybody else have anything to say about this humorous poem? Or do you find it humorous?
I sure do.
Hi, Brother Shankara. So,
Hello, Julie.
hi. So I do find it humorous, but I think it has a really serious sort of backbone to it.
Okay.
Because he is saying that God treats everyone equally. So, right, we are all equal in God's eyes. A leader can be a goofball just the way any of us can be a goofball.
Very nicely put.
So
I think you're right, dear.
And for that reason, then I think the last stanza has a deeper meaning, or has a deep meaning, because we are all a lot better off because God sees us all equally.
Would you read the poem with your understanding, Jillian? Given your understanding of the poem, please read the lines with that in your mind.
Okay, I will. Did God really say the word goofball? Did God really call that famous leader a goofball? If he did, no need to worry about God anymore. He is doing just fine. And we are all a lot better off than I earlier suspected.
I certainly see what you mean. We are all a lot better off because we're equal in his sight. Very nice. That just hadn't occurred to me at all about this poem. Cindy joined us and then she went away. So anyway, anybody else got anything to say about the poem? All righty. I don't know what the next one is, but whatever it is, Heidi, would you read it, please?
Sure. It's no one was cracking the Koans.
Oh, this is a great one. I remember this one a little bit,
I
yeah.
do too, and I had to look what that is, what Koans is. But I would appreciate if someone could explain it, to me too. But
Well,
anyway.
I think Jillian might be the one to explain
Mhm.
since she's done some studying with the Buddhists.
Oh, has she? Okay. All right, but it's pronounced Koans.
Koan. Koan.
Koan.
Yeah.
Koan.
It's how I learned how to pronounce it.
Koan. Okay. All right.
It's a Japanese word.
Right. No one was cracking the koans. No one was cracking the koans. He had tattooed everywhere. So God changed his tactics. He developed a sweet tooth and started chatting about love. He knew that really would not work. And sure enough, things got worse. For a fine rebellious bunch we are. This time people started stockpiling nukes, and lawsuits plagued the land, and smog put a full Nelson on our lungs. And TV hijacked brains, which caused millions to vote Republican. Wow. And all because we couldn't bust a couple koans.
Okay, please read it again.
No one was
And let's just keep in mind that Ladinsky really has said at the beginning of the book that he isn't translating these poems, he's interpreting these poems. So all of this talk of nukes and voting Republican and everything, it's there in Tukaram. The meaning is there, but certainly he's given us words that Tukaram never knew. So
Right. Okay. So we're keeping that in mind now. Yeah, no one was cracking the koans. No one was cracking the koans. He had tattooed everywhere. So God changed his tactics. He developed a sweet tooth and started chatting about love. He knew that really would not work, and sure enough, things got worse. For a fine rebellious bunch we are. This time people started stockpiling nukes, and lawsuits plagued the land, and smog put a full Nelson on our lungs. And TV hijacked brains, which caused millions to vote Republican. Wow. And all because we couldn't bust a couple koans.
okay, first I'd like, because I'm sure that not all of us have certainly I don't have the depth of knowledge about what a koan is that Jillian might have. Jillian, would you explain to us what koans are?
Yes, koans are a practice, mainly in Zen Buddhism. And it's sort of where the teacher gives the student a riddle. And the riddle is not really one to be solved, but one to be meditated upon. So I just looked up one quickly. One famous one is called the 100-foot pole. And so there's a man sitting atop the 100-foot pole. And the question is, how do you step forward? All right. So, so the logical thing, if you step forward, you fall off the pole, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the answer, right? It's again, you're not looking for an answer. You're looking for, that could represent life in a difficult situation. I mean, you just find your own way of just literally sitting with it. And traditionally, students would be all excited about going to their teacher with the right answer. And time and again, the teacher would say, no, go back, no, go back. And
Yep.
it was really a tool for just learning how to sit with dichotomies and things that don't make logical sense.
Yes. Well, I'll relate one, and it's a beaut. I forget who posed it, but it is: you're walking along a road, and coming from the other direction, you encounter a Zen master. What do you do? What could you possibly say that would be of any interest whatsoever to a Zen master? On the other hand, how can you, out of respect, remain silent? What do you do?
That's a good one.
Yeah. A friend of Basho's, whose name I can't remember, but Basho is the one who told this story. Basho was a Zen master and a poet. A friend of Basho's answer to this was, give him an uppercut.
That's kind of like the Buddhist saying, if you see Buddha on the road, kill him.
Yeah, that's another one of their koans, all right. And if you hear the word Buddha, spit. That one has been quoted to me by Gareth Young, who is a practicing Buddhist. So okay, now we have an understanding of koan, and Tukaram says God got impatient with us because we couldn't bust a couple of koans that he said, and I love the word, that he tattooed everywhere. Like, how does nature work? How does nature actually do what it does? Well, the physicists are all, completely at 7s and 6s about this. So that's a good koan all by itself. How does all this work? So, anyone else have anything just they'd like to say about this remarkably funny poem?
Okay, so he tattooed these riddles or whatever. I mean, is that what you're saying? That's a koan right there, that he tattooed them on people?
No, and I didn't tattoo them on people. I don't think that's the
Yeah,
implication.
tattooed everywhere. Oh, okay.
They're tattooed everywhere. In other words, it's like it's said in the Native American tradition, the clues, the clues to finding or seeing the Great Spirit are everywhere you look, but we just don't see them.
Right.
And of course, Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within, and it's also without, but you just don't see it.
Right.
So this is all, I think, relates to that. And I think this second stanza where he says, or the second part of the poem, where he says God developed a sweet tooth and started chatting about love. Well, I think that points directly to Jesus. And because that's what Jesus did, is replace the old covenant of the Old Testament God with the new covenant based in love. And then what does he say happened? We started building nukes and lawsuits were everywhere. What's the third of the things that he mentions?
Yeah, smog put a full Nelson on our lungs.
Right.
TV hijacked our brains,
Right.
which caused millions to vote Republican.
Yeah. And
So-
wow, all because we couldn't bust a couple koans.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, you know, I can see why God got impatient with Tukaram for being so cute. You know, come on, Tukaram, stop your bragging. So anyway,
I think you're right, Brother Shankara. That second stanza is really wonderful because it's so simple. It's almost like, that's the answer to the koan, but we don't get it. We're
right.
still doing things, right? Yeah, that's really wonderful.
Stockpiling nukes.
Mhm.
Ah, yes. Is there any greater form of madness that any society has ever practiced than stockpiling nuclear weapons?
Mm.
Thermonuclear weapons, weapons that, if detonated, could literally wipe out a whole city all at once. I mean, the madness of that is that's why what is it, the something of concerned scientists says we're just a couple of minutes away from doomsday always. So God developed a sweet tooth. I like that. I really like that phrase. And started chatting about love. Yeah. But he starts with the koans. And as Jillian pointed out, it's utterly futile to try to solve a koan. So it's a joke at the end, all because we couldn't bust a couple koans. There is no right answer to a koan. I mean, the most famous koan, and apparently it really is in the lore, is what is the sound of one hand clapping?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the first one listed in a book called Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. What is the sound of one hand clapping? And as Jillian pointed out, you can come to the master that poses a koan with answer after answer after answer after answer. And the answer will always be no. Because there is no right answer. There is only the insight that you gain from pondering the koan.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this poem, like so many of these poems in this book by these various masters, they're circular. They bring us back to the idea that they start with. Anything else from anyone? This is Heidi. Why don't you, now that we've kind of thought about it for a while, why don't you read the poem again and let us hear how he develops the idea, how he Tukaram / Ladinsky develops the idea.
Okay. No one was cracking the koans. No one was cracking the koans he had tattooed everywhere. So God changed his tactics. He developed a sweet tooth and started chatting about love. He knew that really would not work, and sure enough, things got worse. For a fine rebellious bunch we are. This time people started stockpiling nukes, and lawsuits plagued the land, and smog put a full Nelson on our lungs. And TV hijacked brains, which caused millions to vote Republican. Wow. And all because we couldn't bust a couple koans.
Ultimately, my summary of this poem is that it's just delicious.
And I love that he says this time. It's like, this time, because God's tried so many times, and each generation or each culture keeps making, messing
Right.
up the same way.
Right. And he says God developed a sweet tooth, started chatting about love, but he knew this wouldn't work. Well, of course, he's omniscient. He knows everything that ever was, ever is, and ever will be. And yet, here we are.
Yeah. And the part about TV hijacked brains, well, like, just to modernize that, I think the internet and, I don't know, social media, you could say,
Even further hijacked.
even further today, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we're a fine rebellious bunch, we are. Just see how people talk to one another on Facebook.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like they're behind the wheel of a car. They just don't feel like they have any responsibility for civility at all. Many people, not all, everyone, of course. But, they're...
Yeah, this is very appropriate for, the times we're living in right now as well.
Amen, amen, amen.
Mm-hmm.
At the time that he wrote this, of course, in India, and it's still true in India, he was living in India when he wrote this. Smog in India, if we think we've got bad smog here, smog in the big cities of India, Chennai, Mumbai, Kolkata. When I was there in 1999, I almost had to come home because the air quality was so bad, and I have respiratory issues. The leader of our group, the one who paid for us all to go, did have to come home because he got pneumonia.
Mm.
Just to praise his name for a moment, his name was John Kennedy. He made a lot of money, and he said that year, whatever great amount of money he would make, he would dedicate it to a good purpose. And so he asked Swami Swahananda what that good purpose might be. And so he took 5 of us to India, all expenses paid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
Praise his name. And yet he couldn't stay because the air quality was so bad he got pneumonia and had to come home. It's really a shame. Anyway, enough reminiscing about the koans tattooed everywhere. Jillian, would you like to read the next poem?
Sure. The Everything poem. I am looking for a poem that says everything, so I don't have to write anymore. The Everything poem. I'm looking for a poem that says everything, so I don't have to write anymore.
I mean, what can be added to that? Anyone have any comment or question at all?
Well,
Julie? Yeah, go ahead.
he was such a prolific poet, wasn't he? I'm trying to remember how many poems he
It
had
says
written.
8,000 in the little
8,000.
biography. 8,000, which
So
is
why wouldn't, yeah, so why would he not want to write any more poetry? He was,
this is his sense of humor.
right.
He's looking for the poem that says everything. As a matter of fact, it's either Hafiz or Kabir. One of them has it's a longer poem, but they also say the same thing in one way or another.
Yeah, it
That
is very
they want to find a poem that says it all. Not so they won't have to write anymore, but just so that we'll finally understand.
Gotcha. Yeah, because it is rather short.
Yes. So Jillian, if no one has anything else to say about this one, Jillian, why don't you read the next one?
Okay. How could a lover fall? What could have caused your grip to weaken that allowed creation to be? How could a lover fall to his death from the arms of infinite strength? How active you are in the mind, sustaining such a great wall that the sun can cast a frightening shadow, the world believes. No one has ever really known sadness. No real God would ever allow pain. How then can a heart feel it is broken and in need if we are held in the arms of infinite compassion and strength? That mirror you, God, stand before, we need to gaze into it also. That name you called beloved as I fell from your lips. I suffer because I did not quite hear it. So tell me again, dear one, so clear, I am you. How could a lover fall? What could have caused your grip to weaken that allowed creation to be? How could a lover fall to his death from the arms of infinite strength? How active you are in the mind, sustaining such a great wall that the sun can cast a frightening shadow the world believes. No one has ever really known sadness. No real God would ever allow pain. How then can a heart feel it is broken and in need if we are held in the arms of infinite compassion and strength? The mirror you, in parentheses, God, stand before, we need to gaze into it also. That name you called beloved as I fell from your lips, I suffer because I did not quite hear it. So tell me again, dear one, so clear, I am you.
I think this is the everything poem.
Mm.
I mean, I think we could spend a month talking about this poem, literally.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much here. I mean, just the very fundamental question that is posed, that if you let your heart rest on it, will right way bring you to tears. How could this have ever happened?
Mm-hmm.
How could it have ever happened? Because as he points out, poem before last, God knows everything before it happens. I mean, that is the great question. How did this ever come to be? That we suffer, and yet we're told oh, you're only seeming to suffer.
Mhm.
Now there's a koan for you.
Mhm. So the stanza that bedevils me a little bit, that name you called, beloved, as I fell from your lips. What do you all make of that? Is it that God is calling Tukaram beloved?
Well, you know, a number of poets in this book pose that same question in one way or another. Why can't we quite hear you?
Mm.
Hafiz said, the beloved is very hard to hear. And then he goes on to say, oh, well, so what? That is also a poem that we could discuss for a month, that poem of Hafiz's. I mean, this is the great question. And what Sri Ramakrishna answered when someone posed the question in their own way about something Sri Ramakrishna said is, who is speaking? Who is asking the question? And Tukaram says we need to stand in front of the mirror. And what is that line exactly? What are those lines?
The lines I just mentioned, Shankar?
No, the lines about standing in front of the mirror, God.
Oh, that mirror you, parenthesis, God, stand before, we need to gaze into it also.
So God is standing before a mirror that is creation, apparently. We need to gaze into it also. And then what comes next after that?
That name you called beloved as I fell from your lips. I suffer because I did not quite hear it.
And he asserts, I suffer. Rabia talks about the name that kept eluding her. And so she says, I invented one of my own. And that worked. And just exactly what that poem means has been a matter of some thought for me. Well, that brings up a thought that I had earlier. And I want each of you has my email address. So rather than have the social onus of having to vote openly here tonight, my suggestion is that when we finish the book, that we start right over at the beginning. Now, that's a suggestion. That's not a demand. That's not a statement of fact. So there are 5 of you here. If you all vote, if you all send me an email, and all it needs to say is, just Monday night class would be the subject line, and in the body of the email would just be yes or no. So we don't need to discuss it here tonight. But I have now read this book several times, from beginning to end. And I find something new every time I take up any of these poets. So that's why the suggestion, and it is just that. and will be governed by your vote, the majority vote. And please do not be persuaded by my opinion. I mean, just whatever you think, whatever you would like to do. So I ask the 5 of you, please do send me that email. And then if the answer is no, if the group decides no, they don't want to do that, then we can discuss what we might take up instead. But we're about to come to the end of this book, so that's my request to you.
Brother Shankar, I missed I missed the first part of what you said. What are we voting for?
We're just about to come to the end of this book. And my suggestion, and it is just that, my suggestion is that when we finish, we go right back and start again at the beginning. Because this is such a rich soup that we'll enjoy it each time we read these poets. So please do just send me that email. And your answer would just simply be just the subject line, so I'll know immediately. Monday night class, and in the body of the email, just yes or no. You can say anything else you'd like to say, but please do include yes or no. Does that seem fair to everyone? Since we're the ones who come to this now on a regular basis, I mean, these are the regulars now. There are lots of other people who might have voted if they had come. So Jillian, please read this poem again. We've got a good bit of time left, as I think. Yes, I have 8:43, so we have a good bit of time. I'm not saying we need to say anything more about this poem, but I don't think it's any accident that, and I know it's not an accident. I know Ladinsky is intentional, that he has this everything poem. And then afterwards, this poem. Please read it again, Jillian.
How could a lover fall? What could have caused your grip to weaken that allowed creation to be? How could a lover fall to his death from the arms of infinite strength? How active you are in the mind, sustaining such a great wall that the sun can cast a frightening shadow the world believes. No one has ever really known sadness. No real God would ever allow pain. How then can a heart feel it is broken and in need if we are held in the arms of infinite compassion and strength? The mirror you, God, stand before, we need to go to gaze into it also. That name you called beloved as I fell from your lips, I suffer because I did not quite hear it. So tell me again, dear one, so clear, I am you. I love that he says towards the end, I suffer because I did not quite hear it. I mean, in my spiritual practice, I forget over and over and over again.
Yes.
You know, so I don't, and I have to be told again and again and again.
Because the mind is so active, as he says.
Mm-hmm.
You are so active in the mind. What are those lines? It's just absolutely stunning, those lines.
Mm-hmm. How active you are in the mind, sustaining such a great wall that the sun can cast a frightening shadow the world believes. Yeah.
Sustaining such a great wall.
Mm-hmm.
that the sun can cast a shadow. The sun, being the divine presence, of course, can cast a shadow on the wall created by that divine presence that the world believes.
Shankara, would you also, those last three words, I am you, would you also, could you also say that famous that thou art? Isn't that
Yes.
what he's
Oh,
saying?
yes. Yes.
I forget
That's-
which Upanishad it's from, but
That's from the Chandogya.
mm,
It's in the conversation that a sage has with his son.
mm.
And he concludes by saying, that thou art, that thou art. And so, yes, this is what this is. And it's practically every one of these, I would say every one of these saints, realized souls, poets, asserts that they have discovered that they are the divine presence. But as you just said, so straightforwardly and accurately, Jillian, it slips away from us. We find these answers in the great silence. And then when we come to this active mind, it somehow escapes our grip. What? I had it. What happened?
Mhm.
Of course, every one of the great teachers talks about it. Christ talks about it and says, never mind, just trust me. Never mind, just trust me. And Krishna says in the Gita the same thing. All you have to do is understand who I am and why I'm here. That's all you have to understand. Never mind about the rest, whether you grasp it or not. And you can certainly interpret some of the things that Christ said in the same way. So, and Sri Ramakrishna says over and over, he says, stop worrying and reasoning about it. Just pray. Just pray. And that's what the end of this is. This is a prayer. It's a prayer. Please tell me again, beloved. Read those last lines again, please, Jillian.
So tell me again, dear one, so clear, I am you.
Yeah. Like I said, we could talk about this poem for a month, literally. I mean, we could talk about it, go away, and then come back and talk about it some more. Anything else? Anyone else have anything they'd like to say about it?
Stillness definitely speaks, Brother Shankara. When we are still and finding ourselves, I can see the difference over the years after doing meditation.
Yes.
And the longer you do, you continue to do, and then it stays with you too. Once you find yourself, then you're understanding the world around you so easily, so much better, and you become calmer and you respond in a calm manner. Everything settles. Everything just goes so smooth. Life goes so smooth. And I noticed that. I noticed the difference after several years of doing meditation. It's a
Very
wonderful
well said.
feeling. Yes, there
Very
is a book. There is a book, Eckhart Tolle. He wrote a book called Stillness speaks. That's what his book is.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful book, little quotes he wrote. Every day I read a quote and it's just so inspiring. Thank you so much. This is a great poem. We are gods, definitely. I am you. That's what he said.
Mhm.
And Meister Eckhart, there's no accident that Eckhart Tolle's name mirrors that. Meister Eckhart said the same thing in 1306, that there is a great silence that calls to us from within. We're very well served to heed that call.
I was going to say what Jaime said, but also that I think that if you just get a little taste of the divine, that gives you enough to trust.
Very well said, Aaron. And this is why Christ said so clearly, seek ye first the kingdom of God,
Mhm.
and all else shall be added unto you. You know, if you get that taste, then it doesn't go away. The mind may, but that's why we keep coming back to our practice of prayer, contemplation, concentration, and meditation, is because we've had that taste. And that is what Swami Prabhavananda, my teacher, said. That is because the heart has opened. The heart has opened. Anything else from anyone about this poem or anything else? All right, we have time to read one more poem. Triguna, do you have the book there, or do you have the book in front of you, or?
No, I don't.
Okay. Then Haima, would you like to read the next poem, please?
Sure, Brother Shankara. The poem's name is The Source. God has never really spoken, though a thought once crossed his mind. It is the echo of divine silence. We hear the birds sing, and that is the source of all we see and touch. The source. God has never really spoken, though a thought once crossed his mind. It is the echo of divine silence. Divine silence, we hear the birds sing, and that is the source of all we see and touch. It's beautifully said.
Mhm.
Well, this poem is a koan.
Mhm.
I've never been able to really make head nor tail of this poem. Please read it again, Haima.
You're mute, Jaime.
Sorry, the source. God has never really spoken, though a thought once crossed his mind. It is the echo of divine silence. We hear the birds sing, and that is the source of all we see and touch. I understand it is, as Brother Shankara, that God is the echo of divine silence. He is the echo of divine silence. That's what I am getting out of this first stanza.
Well, as has been said so often in this
Yes,
group, there is no right answer, and certainly
I'm
we
thinking.
listen to you with respect and
Thank you.
and accept what you say. Mm, I was just being as honest as I can be, saying that this poem completely defeats reason from my perspective. It it is just paradox upon paradox.
I have a thought, Brother Shankara, if I
Please.
may.
Oh, of course.
So I was an English major, so so I kind of anyway, that's neither here nor there. But as an English major, I was interested in the fact that there's no punctuation after the word silence. There's no comma or period. And so you could say that the birds are singing the echo of divine silence. You
So
put those two,
read
right?
read the lines. Read the line. Read the non-punctuated lines.
It is the echo of divine silence we hear the birds sing.
Ah, it is the echo of divine silence we hear the birds sing.
Otherwise, why would he not put a punctuation after
Yeah, exactly.
silence?
You are right. That's true.
So read the rest of the poem after from that.
It is the echo of divine silence we hear the birds sing, and that is the source of all we see and touch.
So that echo of divine silence
Is the bird's song.
and the source of everything that we see. Lovely. The first two lines are, just quintessential to Quran. God has never really spoken, but a thought crossed his mind once. Anything else from anyone about this poem? Please read it again, Haima, just so that and now read it with the English major's insight.
Yes, sure, Brother Shankar. The source. God has never really spoken, though a thought once crossed his mind. It is the echo of divine silence. We hear the birds sing, and that is the source of all we see and touch. It does make sense, more sense now. Thank you, Jillian. It was nice explanation for us.
Well, it's one. I don't know. Like Shankara
Exactly.
says, there's no right explanation.
Yeah, the way they separated. Yeah, go ahead, Rajiv.
I think there is something else, and I felt this. Like, I think when an atheist says that there is no God, God wants to make that also a truth, and that is a truth. Like, God doesn't want to cheat, so I feel like God created the world and left it alone, and whatever we see, whatever the magic or the godness or anything that we see is kind of also emerging from this material world which is devoid of God. I don't know if it makes sense, but it's true that there is God and there is no God as well, like from one perspective.
Well, Rajiv, we hear with respect what you just said. And certainly it is an integrated thought with what we've been pursuing. So anything else from anyone? All right, dears, it is now 9 o'clock, and I'm not feeling awfully well myself. Nothing serious, but just I'm not feeling awfully well. I spent rather a troubled afternoon, so I'm more than happy to call it an evening. Please let me hear from you, as we discussed earlier, and we'll take it from here next week. Anything else from anyone? All right. We have this way of saying farewell. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. May we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the divine being as our mother and father. So, until next time, any final thought from anyone else?
Feel better,
Thank you, dear.
brother.
I'll feel better after I have the operation on February 17th. And until then, this issue will continue to rear its painful head. So, just for those of you who don't know, I have a condition called a Spegalian hernia. You can look it up, Spegalian, something like that, Spegalian hernia. And I'm going to be operated on. It's a simple operation on February 17th to correct this condition. And but in the meantime, from time to time, it's it captures a lot of attention. All right, good night.
Thank you so much.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night,
Thanks,
brother.
all of you.
Hope you feel better.
Yes.
Good night.
Feel better.
Good
Bye.
night, dears.
Feel better.